Chapter 2341. After dinner, Waylon asked Cameron to return to Emperon first. Daisy and Knollys gave her a ride because it was on their way home. In the car, Daisy saw that Cameron had her eyes on the view outside and wasn't speaking. She pressed her lips together and asked, "Cameron, how do you feel about my brother?" Cameron paused and looked back. "He's fine." "Why? Do you not like him?" "I didn't say that." Cameron looked down. "Shouldn't getting married be something that both parties agree to?" "I don't want to get married yet." She had been tricked into registering for their marriage, and now she was being rushed into having a wedding. She hadn't really thought about it and didn't want to get married before doing that. Daisy stopped speaking. The car stopped outside Emperon, and Cameron got out. After Cameron entered the house, Daisy leaned back in her seat. "Nolly, do you think that Sonny is being selfish for pushing Cameron and Waylon to be together?" He had never asked for Cameron's opinion. Knollys had his hand on the steering wheel while he looked at her, then smiled. "Do you think Cameron has no feelings for your brother?" Daisy was curious. "Do you think she does?" "Why do I have a feeling that she's avoiding his feelings?" "If she's avoiding it, it just shows that she doesn't really understand it." Knollys parked his car in Taylorton's garage. She never confronted her own feelings, but in reality, if she really had no feelings for Waylon, why do you think she would stay here for so long? Daisy was taken aback. That makes sense. If Cameron didn't have feelings for him, she wouldn't have been jealous on set the other day. Since she was jealous, it showed that she had feelings for him. Knollys unbuckled his seatbelt and turned to look at her. They need a bit of threat to come between them. She was confused. Crisis? If she likes him but wouldn't take a step forward, the only way is to make her feel threatened. Daisy immediately understood what he meant. "Are you saying that Waylon should get a woman to test her?" Knollys smiled and brushed the tip of her nose. "Who would work best?" Daisy squinted, suddenly recalled someone, and smiled. "Minzy Holland?" The woman with whom Cameron had gone on a blind date. She seemed to be interested in Waylon after that. It should work. At Emperon, Cameron took her shower and walked out while drying her hair with a towel. She suddenly got a text from Waylon, saying he wouldn't be back that night. Cameron locked her phone and placed it on the desk. Whatever. The next day, after Cameron awoke, she went downstairs for breakfast as usual. However, she saw that the living room was empty, and there wasn't breakfast. Cameron took a look at her phone, and it was already past 8. Was Wayne out the entire night until now? It's alright. DIY then. Cameron made bacon and eggs, took the plate to the table, and had a few bites. She then placed the fork down. Tastes horrible. Cameron added some slate and mixed it up, and it was only slightly better. Cameron's phone rang, and it was Daisy calling. Cameron picked up. "Hello. Cameron, I saw Miss Holland is in Bassburg. Did she ask to meet you?" Cameron frowned. "Miss Holland? Hold on. Is she talking about Minzy?" "But Minzy wouldn't come to meet me at Bassburg unless it was to see Wayne?" Cameron took a deep breath. "Where did you see her?" "At the restaurant." "Oh, isn't that my elder brother?" Daisy pretended to be shocked. "Oh, why would she be meeting him?" Chapter 2342. Cameron bit her lip. "Which restaurant is he at?" Daisy told her the address. Cameron hung up and left after picking up her coat. Daisy hid behind the wall and looked back at Knollys. "Nolly, do you think it's going to work?" Knollys pulled her hat down lower. "Wear it properly. Don't let anyone see you." Waylon quickly showed up at the restaurant but didn't see Daisy. A woman called out to him. "Mr. Goldman?" He frowned as he turned and saw a woman sitting next to the window. It was Minzy. Waylon walked toward her and stopped at her table. "Miss Holland, what brings you here?" Minzy was surprised. "Didn't you ask to meet me?" Waylon squinted. "Me?" His eyes caught someone hiding behind a wall, and he connected the dots upon recalling the text Daisy had sent him. Waylon pulled out a chair and sat across from her. I think someone asked you over by using my name. I'm sorry about that. Minzy looked down. Really? Who could have done that? He glared in the direction of the wall. Not sure. Have you had breakfast? Minzy paused, then smiled. Not yet. Waylon asked the server over to take their order. Daisy pushed her head out to take a peek, but Nolace held her back. He noticed you. She was surprised as she turned around. No way. Really? Nolace smiled. But I think he's playing along. We'll wait for the main character to show up next. Daisy hid between his arms and chortled. He's quite smart. There's no need to send signals to him. After that, she got a text from Waylon. What are you doing? Daisy replied, I'm helping you. Don't you want to see Cameron's reaction? Waylon picked up his glass, looked at the text on his screen, and revealed a shallow smile. He replied, You're only good at being mischievous. Minzy saw that he kept checking his phone, so she asked, Is it something important? He put his phone away. Family matters. Minzy smiled and remembered something. Are you not in a relationship with Miss Southern? He looked up. Why do you ask? Minzy carefully asked, She's in the East Islands, and you're here. Did she not come and see you? If they were together, Cameron would have been at Bassburg instead. Waylon was going to say something when he looked up and saw Cameron walk into the restaurant. Upon seeing Waylon and Minzy together, she angrily bit her lip and turned to leave. Waylon picked up his glass and calmly took a sip, not planning to run after her. Nolace tapped Daisy's shoulder. Daisy saw what had happened and ran after her. Cameron walked out of the restaurant and stopped next to Waylon's car, which was parked there. She got angrier and kicked his rims. You're having fun. Cameron jumped as she turned to look at Daisy, who rushed over out of breath. Why did you leave? Why would I stay? To watch them spend time together? Cameron crossed her arms. She felt as though something was stuck in her chest and was very uncomfortable. Daisy looked away and said in a serious tone, But you can't just let them spend time together. Think about it. Miss Hollis fell head over heels for my brother on the East Islands, and now that she has a chance to spend time alone with him, aren't you afraid she will do something with him? Chapter 2343. Cameron frowned. What can she do? Daisy took a deep breath. Don't underestimate a woman who fancies a man. She would be willing to do anything to get him. Cameron was shocked. Anything? Daisy nodded. Yes. What if she drugged him and got her way with him when he passed out? If she gets pregnant and forces my brother to marry her, you're going to lose him. Cameron took a sharp breath. People do that? Daisy advised. I'm not lying. Waylon is like a sheep to her. Trust me. She's going to order some wine for him. Cameron wasn't convinced, but Daisy immediately grabbed her arm. Come with me if you don't believe me. Hey, Daisy, hold on. She was dragged over. They sat at a table in the corner a little further from them, and Daisy picked up the napkin to cover her face. Wait and see. Cameron covered her face too. Is this a good idea? Daisy said, Don't worry, he's not going to notice us. Even if he did, he wouldn't expose them. Nolace, who was standing behind the wall, received a text from Daisy. He smiled, got a server's attention, and said something to him. Soon after that, the server walked over to them with a bottle of wine and placed it on their table. Minzy was confused. We didn't order this. Waylon said, I did. He looked at the server and asked, Please open it. Daisy, who was sitting at the table in the corner, peeked at Cameron. See? I was right. Cameron balled up her hands and stared at them in silence. The server poured the wine into 2 glasses. Minzy held the glass and raised it. Breakfast with wine. That's pretty interesting. Waylon picked up his glass, held it to his lips, and slowly sipped on it while looking toward the direction of Daisy. Seeing how Waylon drank the wine, Cameron couldn't hold her anger anymore and suddenly got up and rushed over to take his glass away. "Who says you can drink this?" Minzy looked at her in shock. "Miss Southern? She's at Bassburg." Waylon squinted. "I can't drink wine." She placed the glass down. "No." Waylon looked at her and burst out laughing. "Why?" "No reason. You're just not allowed to." Cameron pulled him up. "Come with me." Waylon slowed down intentionally. "I haven't finished my breakfast yet." "No." Cameron didn't stop, as though she was afraid that he would turn back. Daisy blocked her face with the menu and finally relaxed after they left the restaurant. That meant Cameron did care about Waylon. Minzy sat in her seat and looked at the breakfast on the table, feeling sad. She got the server to bring the bill, but the server said someone already paid for it. She was startled. Was it Mr. Goldman? Daisy walked to the counter. "Nolly." The cashier handed the card back to him and put it away. "Ready to go?" She smiled and nodded. On the trip home, Daisy suddenly said, "Nolly, do you think I'm overdoing this?" They had used Minzy, after all. Nollace put his hand on her head. She saw Cameron in Bassburg with her own eyes, so she should have realized that she's with Waylon. Since it worked, she helped. Chapter 2344. Daisy smirked. She's worried that Waylon will go with some other girl. Nollace leaned in closer. "How are you going to thank me?" Daisy kissed him on his lips. He smiled and pinched her chin. "You're getting bolder." Daisy would blush when he kissed her, yet she was now taking the initiative. She looked at him. "Are you not satisfied?" He leaned in. "Not yet." She was bashful. "Don't be too greedy." Meanwhile, Waylon and Cameron returned to the villa. He was removing his coat next to the door when Cameron turned back. "Why are you removing your coat?" He said, "I'm feeling a bit stuffy." Cameron was surprised and remembered that he had drunk some wine. "Who said you could drink the wine?" He paused and raised his brows. "What's wrong with that? Weren't you afraid that she would drop something in there?" Cameron walked over and poked his shoulder. "If she drugs you and does something to you, you're going to." Waylon suddenly understood why she was so anxious. He had said he felt stuffy because it was warmer in the house than outside. That was why he took off the coat. "She thinks I've been drugged?" Daisy must have said something to her. Waylon's eyes twinkled, and he just went with it. "But I drank the entire glass. What should I do?" Cameron froze. "What? What do you mean?" Waylon rubbed his temples and looked uncomfortable. "I'm feeling dizzy." "What?" Waylon slumped over her shoulder and put half his weight on her. Cameron almost fell over, but she caught him. "Waylon, hey, are you drugged?" He hugged her and rested his chin on her shoulder. "I think so. I feel terrible. I'll get you to the hospital." "They can't help," Waylon whispered in her ear. "Help me get to the room." Cameron frowned. "Are you sure you don't want to go to the hospital?" He nodded and held her tight. Cameron helped him up the stairs and into the bedroom. She helped him get into bed, and he pulled her in too as he lay down. Cameron was stunned as she looked at him. "You." Waylon tucked her hair behind her ear, casually brushed her ear with a slightly cold finger, and said in a low voice, "Cam." Cameron's throat was dry, so she gulped. "I thought you were feeling dizzy?" His eyes were on her lips. "Yes, a little." Cameron looked away. "Then why don't you rest?" Waylon planted his lips on her cheeks, then moved to her ear. She shuddered because she felt something flow through her body. Before she could speak, his lips were on hers. Cameron grabbed his shirt around his chest while his breath enveloped her. She lost her energy. Waylon climbed on top of her. Cameron's face burned up in the tight space as she buried it in his shoulder. Waylon's sweat ran down his brows. After a long time, he looked down at Cameron, who was as red as a tomato, and kissed the top of her head. Look at me. No, she was too shy. At night, Cameron was too hungry and snuck downstairs to raid the fridge. After taking out some bread and eggs, she jumped while closing the door because someone was standing next to the door. Waylon was in a robe as he leaned next to the fridge with his arms crossed. You're finally hungry? Cameron said, I just want some supper. Is that illegal? Waylon raised his brows. Of course not. Chapter 2345. Cameron walked into the kitchen and placed the eggs down. Maybe because Waylon was there, she didn't know what to do and stood there for a long time. Waylon stopped behind her and leaned down next to her ear. Heat up the pan. Her ears felt ticklish while her mind was filled with scenes that she couldn't forget. It was shameful. She turned around and pushed Waylon out of the kitchen. Go sleep. Leave me alone. Waylon put out his arms to pull her in. I'm afraid that you might blow up my kitchen, and I'll have to clean it up later. Cameron frowned. You think I can't cook? She could fry an egg. Waylon brushed his thumb over her lips. Are you avoiding me because of what happened earlier? Her face burned up, but because she was prideful, she said, I'm not avoiding you. I just don't want to see you, because it might become awkward. He smiled. Why would it be awkward? Cameron looked at his lower abdomen, but he caught her. What do you think about it? She choked. Her face would probably look like cooked shrimp if it wasn't so dark there. She turned away. No comment. Waylon pushed her hair behind her back, leaned in, and said in a deep voice, you have to feel it to find out. Cameron pressed her hands against his chest, lowered her head, and quickly changed the topic. Wayne, go make supper. Waylon chuckled and walked into the kitchen. Soon after that, he walked out with some bacon, eggs, and tomatoes, and placed the plate on the table. The scrambled eggs were cooked just nicely, and the bacon had a good balance of crispiness, but it was not charred. She looked at the food and realized that it looked so different from what she had made that morning. She picked up a fork and took a bite of the food. It tasted perfect. She then proceeded to eat the rest of the food. Waylon watched as she stuffed her face and couldn't help but laugh. Slowly. No one is going to take it from you. She picked up some bread, wiped the grease and sauce off the plate, and ate it. She then placed the plate back on the table. Waylon put out a hand to wipe away the stain on the corner of her mouth. Did you like it? She put her hand to her lips. Not bad. He smiled. Should I teach you? Cameron didn't think too much about it. You can keep doing it. Waylon paused and smiled widely after a moment. The next day, Daisy went to see Freya at the Seaview Villa. She walked in and saw Beatrice and Didi playing with Charm in the living room. Charm was in her crib, holding a stuffed toy that Beatrice gave her in one hand. She was surprised. You are close friends now? Beatrice turned her head. Aunt Daisy. Daisy walked to them and rubbed their heads. I'm glad you've managed to become friends so quickly. Didi became a lot more cheerful after spending time with Beatrice. Freya walked down the stairs. Daisy, she smiled and walked over. It's almost a month already, right? Freya nodded. I'm almost done with resting. But she remembered something and said, I might not be able to help you for now. Daisy smiled and held her hand. I know, you're going back to school. You'll be a screenwriter when you're back. I'm really happy for you. Freya looked down as she smiled. Daisy, thank you. Daisy raised her brows. There's no need for that. You're not just my friend. You're my sister-in-law. We're family. Family. Freya never imagined becoming part of their family, but now she experienced how it was to have a family, and it was warming. Chapter 2346. At least Freya was no longer alone. While Daisy was staying at the Seaview Villa, she received a call from Charlie. She came to the courtyard to accept the call. Come back to the office now. This is urgent, said Charlie. Daisy hung up the call and rushed back to Tenet. Charlie was waiting for her in the office. When he saw Daisy, he put the variety show notice in his hand on the desk. "This is the variety show 24 hours in an inn. Are you interested?" Daisy was stunned. Wasn't this the variety show Tiffany participated in? It was a variety show that showed the life of celebrities. It was recently aired with great popularity and high ratings. Daisy returned to her senses and asked, "You want me to join this variety show?" Leaning against the back of the chair, Charlie replied, "The investor of this variety show is Mr. Hannigan. He wishes the show to give the audience a different experience. You're the most famous person in Bassburg right now. Besides, everyone is curious whether you're using your identity as the daughter of the Goldmans to get everything your way, so I believe the variety show will give the audience a better understanding of your true self. Initially, I planned to let you and James join the variety show, but unfortunately, James is pretty occupied right now. Therefore, the director invited Mr. Boucher to be the temporary guest for the next season. Mr. Boucher will be joining as well." Daisy was shocked. Charlie nodded. "After all, you're the main focus in the next season. You may choose 2 special guests of your choice to accompany you." Meanwhile, Nolan was having a meeting with Tanner in a restaurant. Tanner handed a document to Nolan. After reading it, Nolan lifted his eyelids and asked, "You want to rent my place?" Tanner chuckled, "Yes, I want this variety show to have a rustic style, and your place is exactly where I want it to be." Nolan frowned, "You want my daughter to help you earn money?" He chuckled, "We're partners. Do you think you would lose money while I'm earning money?" Nolan picked up his coffee. Apparently, Tanner knew that this was a good business opportunity. He started to invest in the entertainment industry and made a variety show that was different from others. Other people only invited celebrities to take part in a variety show, but he chose to make a reality show for the upper class. Other than Daisy, the rest of the people were not celebrities, but at least they were well known. If he wanted to stand out in the variety show, he did need to be different. "I'll discuss it with my father. After all, those flowers and plants in the garden are his treasure. He might not be happy about it if something were to happen to them." Tanner said, "Don't worry, I'll ask the crew to be careful. They won't destroy a single thing in your house." At Emperon. At noon, Cameron turned around on her bed. She touched something and cracked her eyes open. When she saw Waylon lying on her bed, she sprung up. "What are you doing here again?" He chuckled, "Look around you. Is this your room?" Cameron was stunned and turned her head around. "Wait for a second. I remember I went back to my own room last night." "Why am I here?" she asked. He sat up and replied, "Who knows? Maybe you sleepwalked into my bed." "Impossible." Cameron refuted. "I never sleepwalk. It must be you." Waylon squinted and pinned her under him. "Really?" Cameron put her hands on his chest and shouted nervously, "Get off me, Wayne." Waylon went nearer to her and pressed his lips on her cheek. "I'll get off you after you kiss me." "You." Cameron's cheeks turned red. It was only now that she realized how shameless Waylon could be. Waylon looked at her intently and continued with a hoary voice, "If not, I'll kiss you." Chapter 2347. Cameron held his head in place and kissed him. Waylon squinted and put his hand on the back of her head to deepen the kiss, causing Cameron's heart to leap into a gallop. The hair and clothes of the person underneath him were disheveled. She looked just like a broken beauty, and he just couldn't hold himself back anymore from wanting her. Waylon's eyes were filled with desire. He could barely hold himself back anymore. He grabbed her wrist and kissed it. "Cam, it's about time." Cameron's mind was a muddled mess. She couldn't think straight right now as she asked, "What did you say?" "I said I want to." Suddenly, the bell rang, causing Waylon to stop midway through his sentence. Both of them opened their eyes and looked at each other. Cameron finally came around to her senses and quickly pushed Waylon away. She sat up on the bed and said, "I think you should go answer the door." Waylon covered his face with his palm and took a deep breath. "You go out first." Cameron hastily left his room. While in the corridor, she patted her chest and heaved a sigh of relief. If it hadn't been for the doorbell, she might have already offered herself to Waylon. She put on a jacket and went downstairs to open the door. Daisy was standing in front of the door. When she saw Cameron, a smile appeared on her face. "I hope I didn't disturb you guys." Cameron gave her an embarrassed smile as she grabbed Daisy's hand. "Of course, you didn't disturb us. You're here right on time. Are you here for your brother?" Daisy replied, "I came to look for you too." After Waylon put on his clothes, he came downstairs unhurriedly and stopped in front of the couch. "What's the matter?" Daisy walked up to him and grabbed his arm. "Waylon, I'd like to discuss something with you too. After all, you may get mad at me if I make the decision without asking you guys." Waylon was caught between tears and laughter. He poked her forehead and said, "Did I scold you for the lousy idea you gave me?" He was referring to Minzy. Daisy laughed dryly and looked at Cameron before whispering into his ear. "Then what do you think about the outcome?" Waylon sat on the couch and replied, "Not bad." "What are you guys whispering behind my back?" Cameron narrowed her eaves. "How can they keep a secret from me?" With a smile on her face, Daisy walked over to Cameron and coiled her arms around hers. "Cameron, I need you and Waylon to help me with something." "What is it?" asked Cameron. Daisy smiled at her and said, "I want you two to participate in a variety show with me." Cameron was stunned. She pointed at herself and said, "Me? You want your brother and me to participate in a variety show with you?" Daisy nodded. Then, she said, "Uncle Tanner is one of the investors in the variety show 24 Hours in an Inn. The guest for the next season will be Uncle Helios and me. Besides, I can bring 2 special guests with me, so I thought about you and my brother, then I came to ask you too about it." Cameron looked at Waylon. Waylon lifted his eyelids, but did not say anything. She pulled Daisy to the side and whispered, "Daisy, I don't think we should trouble your brother about a trivial matter like this. It doesn't matter if your brother wants to go or not. I'll go with you as long as I can get paid. After all, only a fool would say no to money." Daisy looked at Cameron. She was not sure if her brother would come with her or not, but she was certain that Cameron would be interested. Sure. If Cameron agreed, there was a high chance that her brother would come with her too. Waylon poured himself a cup of tea and looked at them. "Since you ask me for your help, as your brother, of course, I'll help." Cameron turned her head to look at him. "I thought you didn't want to go?" After all, he clearly looked like he was not interested at all just now. He picked up the cup of tea and replied, "Did I ever say that?" There was no way he would say no to his sister, since she was basically creating a chance for both of them. Cameron was rendered speechless. Daisy clicked her fingers and said, "That's decided then. I hope you won't back out on me." The smile on Cameron's face froze. She did not know why, but she felt that she had walked into a trap. "Adzester, Han, I heard that you accepted the invitation from 24 Hours in an Inn. But Daisy will be the main guest for the next season. Are you sure you want to go?" Chapter 2348. In the dressing room, a few actresses gathered around Hannah when they heard that she had accepted the invitation to 24 Hours in an Inn and talked about it. The show staff had announced the trailer for the next season. Daisy was the main guest. She had been receiving a lot of attention throughout the entertainment industry because of Tiffany. In the last season, Tiffany was kicked out of the variety show, and she had created quite a lot of commotion across the entertainment industry. There was a rumor going around saying that Daisy was the one who got her removed from the variety show by using her strong family background. Even though Tiffany was exposed to be a hypocrite and was blacklisted by the entertainment industry, there were still a lot of topics about Daisy across the internet. At present, what was going on in the entertainment industry was that most female celebrities were afraid to have any interaction with Daisy. They were scared that they might end up the same as Tiffany if they rubbed Daisy the wrong way. 3 years ago, it was rumored that Hannah had apologized to Daisy in front of the media after Daisy received the Best Actress award. It was also because Hannah had been at odds with Daisy before, so they all thought they did not have a good relationship. Therefore, they were kind of surprised when the show staff invited both Daisy and Hannah to the same variety show. Hannah was flipping through the magazine absent-mindedly as she replied, "It's just a variety show. There's nothing to worry about. What if she gives you trouble while you're there? There's nothing you will be able to do at that time other than swallow the humiliation. Yeah, Han, I think you should reject it. After all, those who get too close to Daisy don't end up well. After all, she was the daughter of the Goldmans, the apple of her family's eyes. Tiffany's bad past deeds were exposed by them just because she was at odds with Daisy. Naturally, normal female celebrities like them would never stand a single chance against Daisy." Hannah closed the magazine and raised her head. "It isn't easy to get a chance to participate in a variety show, so why should I reject it? I think you should mind your own business." After she finished speaking, she rose to her feet and left the dressing room. The remaining actresses looked at each other. They were unhappy with Hannah's attitude as they said, "I'm sure she just wants to ride on the wave of Daisy's popularity. Just because she became an actress earlier than us, she thinks she can give us that kind of attitude? No matter how successful she is, it can't change the fact that Tenet Media fired her." Several days later, the staff of the show 24 Hours in and received permission from Nicholas to use the Goldman Mansion as the shooting site. They began to decorate the site. The mansion was finally built, and the view of the town was beautiful. It looked just like a paradise and fit very well with the main theme of 24 Hours in and for this season. Daisy did not expect the show staff to choose her own house as the shooting site, and she was stunned. "What's wrong?" The question came alongside a big hand that landed on her head. Daisy turned around and smiled. "Godfather Helios?" Helios was standing outside of the courtyard, looking at the staff as they decorated the site. "Tana really has great taste. It seems like this season is going to be a lot different from the previous session." Daisy did not say anything in return. The variety show 24 Hours in and In was a new show that got released recently. Unlike other variety shows, the recording was done live. It was said that the variety show did not have many sponsors in the beginning. Therefore, the shootings for the first few seasons were done in hotels, and the crew spent a little money out of their own pockets to turn the hotels into lodging style. Of course, this was very close to normal people's lives. After all, it was a show where celebrities experienced life on their own. The show staff did not have a big budget. They could not invite A-list celebrities, so they turned their target to B or C-list celebrities. However, since the show was broadcasted live and the interaction between guests was awkward, the show did not have much viewership. Only after Tanner invested in this variety show and the budget increased did the show staff decide to change the style. They would shoot the show at different locations in a season. They would go to the seaside, the grass plain, the forests, or even a big city. Chapter 2349. They would shoot at scenic spots and eat the most delicious dishes across different cities. They would play different games as well. The show became even more interesting. The different lifestyles, the coziness and laughter, and the companionship were what people desired, and the ratings naturally surpassed other shows. Daisy looked at him. "It's indeed different. After all, we have two special guests who are not from the entertainment industry." Helios squinted. "Two special guests?" At that moment, a black luxury car stopped in front of the courtyard. Daisy turned her head around and said, "There they are." Waylon and Cameron came down from the car. When Helios saw them, he laughed. "Your brother is considered a child star as well. It's just that he didn't choose to become an artist afterward." Daisy raised her brows and asked, "So, are the special guests I invited outstanding enough?" Waylon walked over to Helios and greeted him, "Uncle Helios." Helios patted his shoulder and said, "I didn't expect that we would work together again on a variety show after so many years. I'm starting to miss the way you did the TV show with me when you were a kid." When he was only a kid, he played Helios' son with Daisy in several TV shows. He also played the childhood of the character that Helios played. When they thought about it, they realized that it had been a long time. Waylon chuckled. "Yeah. Please take care of us this time as well, Uncle Helios. Cameron was stunned. She looked at Waylon and asked, "You were a child star when you were young?" Daisy walked up to Cameron and said, "I remember I've told you before. My brother and I were child stars. It's just that he didn't become an artist when he grew up. He had played several roles with Uncle Helios in the past." Cameron found it hard to believe. Unbelievable. She did not know why, but she suddenly wanted to watch those TV series that Waylon participated in when he was a kid. The director walked over with a smile on his face and said, "Mr. Boucher, Miss Vanderbilt, the site has been set up. We plan to start the recording today. What do you think?" Helios nodded. "Sure." The director then reminded them, "This variety show is presented in the form of a live broadcast, so there is no script. You need to play it by ear and show your usual selves as much as possible." When the show started, Daisy suddenly remembered something. "Oh yeah, you guys aren't afraid of dogs, right?" Everyone was confused. Dogs? Soon, Daisy went to the backyard and brought Goldbar over. It was a big and fluffy Alaskan Malamute with light blue eyes. There were 2 small Alaskan Malamutes beside Goldbar as well. They were its kids. Cameron was stunned. "You guys have a dog too? And it isn't a small dog?" Daisy squatted down and rubbed Goldbar's fluffy fur. "This is Goldbar. We keep it at the Goldman Mansion to keep our grandfather company. These 2 are its kids. The white one is called Fortuna, and the one with point coloration is called Cash." The corner of Cameron's lips twitched. She sure has a weird naming sense. Fortuna and Cash were more obedient as they were afraid of strangers. However, Goldbar was friendlier. When Cameron went near it, it allowed her to pet its head. Helios lowered his head to look at his watch and said, "The others are about to arrive. Wayne, let's go prepare some snacks for them." Waylon nodded and followed Helios into the kitchen. The cameraman followed them as well. Daisy and Cameron stayed in the courtyard and played with the dogs. Cameron seemed a little bit uncomfortable with so many cameras around her and whispered, "How long will they keep recording us?" Daisy lifted her head to look at her. "A whole day." Cameron was stunned. "What?" Daisy chuckled. "Don't worry. We'll have a break in the middle, so just relax." Chapter 2350. A car stopped in front of the door. Daisy rose to her feet and said, "It should be other guests. I'll go check it out." Daisy came to the door and looked ahead. The woman who came out of the car first took off her sunglasses and said, "I wondered who it was." "So, it's Daisy." Daisy walked up to her with a smile on her face and hugged her. "It has been a long time." Hannah snorted and replied, "I thought you had already forgotten about me." "Don't be silly. I'll never forget about you." After Daisy finished talking, she looked toward the other 2 guests who came down from the car. One of them was Denzel Norris, a rising male artist, and the other one was Zoe. Daisy was slightly dumbfounded when she saw Zoe. The show had invited Hannah, who was rumored to be at odds with her, but the reality was that they were good friends. However, Zoe had fought with her for a role in the past. Are they for real? Do they not know about our feud? How could they invite her? That being said, the show had already started, so Daisy could only greet them with a smile on her face. Zoe seemed rather indifferent as she did not respond to Daisy. Denzel sensed something was wrong, so he hastily took the gifts he had brought out of the car. "Daisy, Han, these are the small gifts I prepared for you. I hope you'll like them." Hannah took over the gift and replied, "That's so sweet of you, Denny." "Thank you." "Denny?" Daisy felt that there was something fishy between Hannah and Denzel, but she did not think too much about it. The staff handed the tablet to the director. Over 100,000 fans were watching the live broadcast. The number of viewers was increasing rapidly, and there were more than tens of thousands of comments. "Damn it. I can't believe that they've invited Helios too. Is the show staff for real? Do they not know that Daisy and Zoe fought each other for a role before? How could they invite both of them to the same show?" How can Zoe be so rude? Daisy took the initiative to greet her, but she just ignored her. Who does she think she is? This mansion seems expensive. Well, as expected of the Goldmans. So, Hannah and Daisy are good friends. I wish Daisy wasn't on this show. She's so fake. Just as they expected, Daisy and Zoe got the most attention from the viewers. Daisy's fans were not happy with Zoe's attitude, while Zoe's fans accused Daisy of her hypocrisy. Helios carried some snacks to the courtyard and said, "Guys, the snacks are ready." Denzel put down the gift and offered his help. Helios then said, "Den, there are some beverages and tea in the kitchen. Can you do me a favor and bring them out?" Denzel nodded. Okay. Denzel is such a good kid. Helios is still so kind and gentle to his junior. The long table in the courtyard was covered with a white tablecloth. There were some fruit platters and fine snacks placed on top of the table. Daisy then introduced Cameron to Hannah. "Meet Cameron, my future sister-in-law." Cameron was stumped. "What are you talking about?" When she realized that there were cameras around, Cameron cleared her throat and continued. "I'm not your sister-in-law yet." Zoe sat in front of the table and commented sarcastically, "Wow, since you brought them to the show, why don't you bring your whole family instead?" Hannah narrowed her eyes. Does she know what she's talking about? Cameron looked toward Zoe and fell deep in thought. The staff on the side broke into a sweat with fright. What they intended to create to attract more audience was a buzz, not a conflict. More and more people started commenting after they heard what Zoe said. Is she there to mess around? What is wrong with the show staff? Why did they even invite her?